One moment, please. Security.
Thank you.
All yours.
I stand before you today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States of America. I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman, and I am equally proud of that. I am not the candidate of any political bosses or fat cats or special interests. I stand here now without endorsement from many big-name politicians or any other kind of prop. I do not intend to offer you the tired and glib cliches that have too long been an accepted part of this political life. I am the candidate of the people of America. Fellow Americans, we have looked in vain for the Nixon administration, for the courage, the spirit, the character, and the words to lift us, to bring out the best in us, to rekindle in each of us the faith of the American dream. Yet all we have received in return is deceit and deception, callousness and indifference to our individual problems, and the disgusting playing of divisive politics, pitting the old against the young, labor against management, north against south, black against white. The president has broken his promises to us, and is therefore has lost his claim to our trust and our confidence in him. I cannot believe that this administration would have ever been elected 4 years ago if we had known then what we know today. We are entering into a new era in which we as Americans must demand stature and size from our national leadership. Leadership that is fresh, leadership that is open, leadership that is receptive to the problems of all Americans. I have faith in the American people. I believe that we are smart enough to correct our mistakes. I believe that we are intelligent enough to recognize the talent, energy, and the dedication that all Americans, including women and minorities, have to offer. I know from my travels from vast potential that we can and must put to constructive use to getting this great nation together. I would remind all Americans at this hour the words of Abraham Lincoln, that a house divided cannot stand. We Americans are all fellow countrymen, one day confronting the judgment of our history and our country. We are all God's children, and the will of each of us is as precious as the will of the most powerful corporate or general or millionaire. And my presence before you now symbolizes a new era in political history. I've always earnestly believed in the great potential of America. Our will can create a new America in 1972, one where there is freedom from violence and war at home and abroad, where there is freedom from poverty and discrimination, where there exists at least a feeling that we are making progress and ensuring for everyone medical care, employment, and decent housing. Where we more decisively clean up our streets, our water, and our air. Where we work together, black and white, to rebuild our neighborhoods and to make our cities twice as attractive, efficient, and fundamentally, where we live in the confidence that every man and every woman in America at long last has the opportunity to become all that he or she was created to be, such as his. And in conclusion, all of you who share the vision from New York to California, from Wisconsin to Florida, our brothers and sisters on the road to national unity and a new America. Those of you who vote for the first time, those of you who agree with me that the institutions of this country belong to all the people who inhabit it, those of you who have been neglected, left out, ignored, forgotten, or shunned aside for whatever reason, give me your help this hour. Join me in an effort to reshape our society and regain control of our destiny as we go down this Chisholm Trail for 1972. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. It's my honor and my pleasure to be with you. Your interest in little Shirley Anita St. Hill from Brooklyn, New York. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Miss Abercrombie. I think there's supposed to be a chair here. You see, I've always said that if they don't give you a seat at the table, you bring your own chair. Where do I start? Let's start at the beginning. My childhood. Oh, it was very exciting. I grew up, well, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but I grew up on the islands of Barbados with my maternal grandmother, maternal uncle, and my maternal aunt. Me and my three sisters, we all received our elementary schooling on the islands in Barbados. Fantastic, fantastic school systems. We lived on a great big farm. We had to take care of all the chickens and the sheep and the goats. Very, very exciting. And I do remember that, I don't know if this is important or not, but, each one of us, each three, my sisters and myself, we all received scholarships because we were so bright. We had high IQs. And that was attributable to my rearing in the British West Indies. And when I returned to the States at 9 years of age, when I came back to the States, there were two other women who had a fantastic influence on me. Mary McLeod Bethune, who said to me, Shirley, you're very smart. You're very smart, but you're going to have to stand and fight. And the other woman, who had a fantastic influence on me, was Eleanor Roosevelt. She had come to New York City, and she saw me in a debate. I was in a debate, political debate, and she came. And I remember her. She was a very tall woman. She wore her hair in a chignon, and she wore this little pork pie hat. She wasn't very attractive, but when she opened her mouth, there was such warmth. And she said to me, Shirley Anita St. Hill, you are very intelligent. You are very intelligent. But you're going to have to fight. They all told me I had to fight. That's where I think I earned my nickname, Fighting Shirley. But she said, don't you let anyone stand in your way. Even a woman can do it. And that stuck with me. So my rearing in Barbados, I've never been afraid of anything and never been afraid of anyone. It's the same way today. I'm not afraid of anything or anyone. We're going to do it for me. Always with a smile. I don't think I was always interested in politics, but I must say that the turning point came when I was a sophomore at Brooklyn College. And we had the leader of the district. His name was Stanley Steinblut. He came to give a lecture on the plight of blacks in the political arena. And he said to me, there was one thing he said to me that I never will forget. He said, blacks are moving up now. But there's one truth that you're always going to have to remember. And that stuck with me. I said, that's what you think. And that became a challenge from then on. Such a challenge that it's exactly what I was thinking about when I spoke to a young group of African American students at the Historical Black College at Howard University, April 21st, 1969. Good morning, students.
Good morning.
Good morning. While nothing is easy for the black man in America, neither is anything impossible. Like Old Man River, we are moving along, and we will continue to move resolutely until our goal of unequivocal equality is attained. We must not be docile, we must not resign, nor must we be inwardly bitter. You see, we must see ourselves in an entirely new perspective, and we cannot sit in our homes waiting for someone to reach out and do things for us. We're on the move now, and as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a struggle. It never has, and it never will. The United States can no longer afford the luxury of costly, morally, religiously, and ethically wrong racial discriminations. For America needs all of her citizens with their abilities developed to make a fuller contribution to the future. Many problems are screaming loudly in this country. The thousands of black citizens disenfranchised, living under degrading conditions. The millions of poor in this nation, white and black, who lack the bare rudiments for fruitful living. The rapidly growing numbers of children caught in a web of disillusionment, which destroys their ability to even want to learn. The increasing numbers of aged who don't even look forward to rest or retirement. Indeed, a principal byproduct of the American Civil Rights Movement has been the awakening of the black citizen to his awesome potential, his political potential. And just as that picket line and that lunch counter demonstration and the boycotts were dramatic, effective weapons for the protest of the Civil Rights Movement, I am telling you that polling place. That polling place is the new phase and the new thrust of the black man's bid for equality of opportunity. I say power concedes nothing without a struggle. The leaders of today in the black communities must be able to place the goal of freedom ahead of their personal ambitions. The reason Wall Street is in a great financial center that it is today is because of the blood, sweat, and tears of your forefathers who worked in the tobacco and cotton fields. And now, because this nation is a mercantile nation, is enjoying the efforts and the labor of many of our forefathers, many of you just want to escape and run away. No. We need a liberated and developing black community in America that once it has fully discovered its inherent power, turns to even the greater task of protecting and enlarging upon its triumphs by further enriching an American culture that has already drawn so much from the black life stream. We need black businessmen who can rise beyond the local tax and spend and make dollars as well as cents for the black community that plays a full part in all levels of government. And there can be no understanding of the recent rioting of northern black ghettos or any realistic analysis of its impact upon the civil rights movement in this nation without the realization that black citizens have pressing and long neglected grievances. The black man's responsibility today is to establish his own values and his own goals. And in doing so, he will be affecting the larger American society for which he is a part. The black man and the black woman cannot, however, act alone. They must act within a community, or a family, or a job, or a neighborhood. Let us not kid ourselves into thinking that the white man is suddenly going to make that choice readily available. The new day is coming. With honest black pride and unified black action and education and politics and economics. Why this has taken so long to discover this simple approach is one of the mysteries of the 20th century. The Jews, the Poles, the Slavics all discovered this phenomenon years ago. I tell you, compassion and understanding may moralize this system periodically, but it will never make it honest, just, and decent for us. Remember, power concedes nothing without a struggle. You know, there were such brilliant minds and beautiful faces that day. Such potential. You see, education is the passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And I realized that when I looked in my neighborhoods, why the black children weren't getting along. And it was because they didn't have access to higher education and opportunities and scholarships. So I made it my business to work in the field of education when I got to the United States Assembly. And I worked hard, and it was a battle. It was a real struggle, but I won. And black children were able to get scholarships to pursue their higher education and make an investment in themselves. I also had the struggle of trying to get tenure for the women who would go out on maternity leave only to come back and find they had no job. That was a struggle. A struggle to get domestics to have a fair access to a minimum wage. I fought that too, and won that battle. There were a lot of obstacles. If anybody would have asked me what my main obstacle was, I would have to say men. Yeah, black men, white men, Puerto Rican men. They gave me a hard way to go. They said that Shirley, she's just too darn outspoken. She's always raising issues. Always asking the who, what, where, and why. My first 2 to 3 months, miserable. Gentlemen wouldn't even sit at the same table when we went to go get a bite. They wouldn't even sit at the same table as me because I was a black woman. I'll give you 2 little instances to tell you that I did have a sense of humor about a lot of things. There was a little dining room underneath the house floor. And that's where you would go if you had a long day and you wanted to get a bite. Well, this day I went down and I didn't know that all the tables there were set up for the different delegations. So there was a table for New York, a table for Alabama. So I went down, I saw an empty table, 10 chairs at the table, and I sat down. And I brought the New York Times with me that day because nobody would ever talk to me. So I just began to read, and as I looked up, if looks could kill. If looks could kill, I would have been dead. Because I was seated at the Georgia delegation table and didn't know it. And this man looked at me and he said, "You seated at the wrong table." I said, "Excuse me, what did you say?" He said, "I said, you seated at the wrong table." I said, "Excuse me, well, what table is this?" He said, "The Georgia delegation." I said, "Well, oh, I'm sorry. Well, I didn't realize that the tables aren't labeled. Tomorrow." out where New York sits, and then I will sit there. And I continue to eat. And he continued to say, I said you sitting at the Georgia delegation table. So I said, you better move from here somewhere so-and-so, or I'll do so-and-so, so-and-so. And then I looked at him, and I began to feel sorry for him, because he was hungry. So I decided to use a different psychological approach on him. I said, oh, I'm sorry, you're hungry, aren't you? And he said, sure, I'm hungry. And I said, and I know what your problem is. You can't sit here because a black woman is at this table. Is that right? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm going to help you. You see that table directly across from me? There's nobody at it. You go over there and you order your lunch. And if anybody bothers you, you tell them to come see Shirley Chisholm. But he marched right over and he sat at the table. It just showed me how ridiculous some of this stuff is. And then this last one brought the house down. There was a gentleman who used to sit on the aisle of the floor. And, you know, every day I would walk in and he would cough so badly. He was always coughing. And I said to my friend, Brock Adams, who was the representative of the state of Washington, I said, why doesn't somebody do something for that man? He sounds like he has TB. There's something wrong with him. And he said, Shirley, I'm waiting for you. You have to do something. Every time this man sees you, he starts coughing. And as soon as you walk by him, he takes out his handkerchief. He spits in his handkerchief to spit in your face. That was his way of greeting me in the United States House of Representatives. I said, really? I thought he said no. So what are you going to do about it? I said, you watch me tomorrow. I had a sweater suit. And the sweater suit had big pockets. And I went out and I purchased a male handkerchief. And I walked onto the house floor, and sure enough, he starts coughing. So I said, okay, baby, I'm going to get you today. And so I walked, by this time I had synchronized that when he would pull out his handkerchief, I pull out my handkerchief right when he was about to spit in my face. I spit in my handkerchief, and I put it in his face, and I said to him, beat you to it today. And from that day on, he never coughed again. And I'll tell you, the newspaper people, they were up in the balcony, they saw this from up there, they roared, they almost toppled over, and the speaker was hitting the gavel. He said, there will be order, there will be order. Oh, but they liked it. They liked it because, you know, sometimes the house would be so boring. They'd be like, but I tell you, they belittle women so badly. And so, you've made some progress. There's 101 women in the House of Representatives. And they're giving them the business. Yes. Alexandria? Yeah. Kamala? Right? Maxine? Yes. They're giving them the business. You know, I do believe that a woman will be president. I just think that a woman needs to be vice president first. Yes. So that they can get used to that idea of her ascending to high office. But it's still a mystery. It's still a mystery that even with 101 women in the House of Representatives, we still don't have an equal rights amendment. Right. I addressed Congress on this very issue, May 21st, 1969. Mr. Speaker, when a young woman graduates college and starts looking for a job, she's likely to have a very frustrating and even demeaning experience ahead of her. You see, the unspoken assumption is that women are different, that they do not possess the executive ability, orderly mind, stability, leadership skills, and are just too emotional. It has been observed that society for a long time discriminated against another minority, the blacks, on the same basis, that they too were different and inferior. The happy little homemaker and the contented old darky on the plantation were both reduced by prejudice. As a black person, I am no stranger to racial prejudice. But the truth is, in this political world, I have far oftener been discriminated against because I am a woman than because I am black. Prejudice against blacks is becoming unacceptable, although it will take years to eliminate it, but it is doomed, because slowly white America is beginning to admit that it exists. Prejudice against women, however, is still acceptable. There's very little understanding yet of the immorality involved in double pay scales and the classification of most of the jobs, the better jobs, being for men only. It is true. It is true that part of the problem has been that women have not been aggressive in demanding their rights. This was also true of the black population for many years. They submitted with oppression sometimes and even cooperated with it. Women have done the same thing. But now, there's an awareness of the situation, particularly among the younger segment of the population. It is for this reason that I wish to introduce to you today a proposal that has been before every Congress for the last 40 years, and that sooner or later must become a basic part of the law of this land, and that is the Equal Rights Amendment. It is obvious that discrimination exists. Women do not have the same opportunities that men do. Women that do not conform to the system or who try to break with the accepted patterns are stigmatized as odd and unfeminine. The fact that a woman who aspires to be the chairman of the board or a member of the House does so for the exact same reasons as any man. She thinks she can do the job and she wants to try. Now, an argument often heard against the Equal Rights Amendment is that it would eliminate legislation that many states and federal governments have enacted giving special protection to women, and that it would throw the marriage and divorce laws into chaos. Well, as for the marriage laws, they're due for a sweeping reform. And an excellent beginning would be to wipe the existing ones off the books. Regarding special protection for working women, I cannot understand why that should be needed. Women need no protection that men do not need. What we need are laws to protect working people, to guarantee them fair pay, safe working conditions, protection against sickness and layoffs, and a provision for a dignified and comfortable retirement. Men and women need these things equally. And to suggest that one sex needs more protection than another is nothing but a male supremacist myth, as ridiculous and unworthy of respect as the white supremacist myth that this society is trying to cure itself of at this time. When men and women are prevented from recognizing one another's essential humanity by sexual prejudices, nourished by legal as well as social institutions, society as a whole will remain less than what it could otherwise become. off and asked, what do you feel is your greatest achievement? And I must tell you, it was the audacity, or my audacity, that I had to run for the presidency of the United States. I don't want to be remembered as being the first African American woman to run for Congress or be in Congress. I don't even want to be remembered as being the first African American woman to make a bid for the presidency. I want to be remembered as a woman who lived in the 20th century, who dared to be herself. And make sure that she was a catalyst for change in America. Yes. But I knew all hell was going to break loose when I made that bid for the presidency. I knew, and I kind of expected it. What I didn't expect was George Wallace. You remember George Wallace? The racist governor of Alabama? He took a liking to me. Did you know that?
No.
He liked me for some strange reason. George Wallace. I knew this because when we were having our race in the Floridian primary, I was beating John Lindsay. George Wallace came out for me. As a matter of fact, he said, if y'all can't vote for me, don't vote for that oval-headed lizard. Vote for Shirley Chisholm. But that crashed my votes in Florida. They thought we were in cahoots together, and that killed me in Florida. However, when George Wallace was shot, you remember that? Yes. Everybody was going to visit, in terms of those of us, there were 13 of us in the race, we were going to visit them. And people were all in arms. I almost lost my seat because I wanted to go visit George Wallace. Because George Wallace he stood on the steps of the Alabama University and said that no black should ever enter. Segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. My people were up in arms because I was going to go visit George Wallace. But I told him, we don't do things like this. I would never want this to happen to anybody. And when I walked in to the hospital, he was sitting there with tubes in his nose and in his throat. And he said to me, Shirley Chisholm, what you doing here? You can't be here. No people are going, what are people going to do to you? I said, George, don't you worry about that. I am here because you are ill. And God guides us. And he said, come over here, Shirley, come and talk to me. And he reached out his hand. And I'll never forget it, his hand was flying. But he held on to my hand so tight. And he said, what do you want me to do? I said, don't you worry about that. And he just cried. He held on tightly and cried. And when the nurse said, Congresswoman, I'm sorry, because he was very ill. He said, you can't stay. He didn't want me to go. And then 4 years later, when I went to Alabama, he sent for me. He sent for me, and when I got to the airport, there were a lot of people there. He had people waiting and waiting for me. He wanted to he brought me to the governor's mansion. He wanted to see what had happened and what change he had made. Who he had appointed, he had appointed black people to positions of power, secretary of state, secretary of all types of political positions in the government. He had changed because of that encounter. And I think about that, and it still remains very strange to me that an Alabama governor went out for me. But unfortunately, I think about this country and where we are today, and I can't be optimistic. I try very hard, and I love my country. That's why I serve it. But I can't be optimistic. When our basic constitution has phrases related to slavery in it, it's hard to be optimistic. But I love my country, and I will continue to serve it. Thank you. I spoke to a group of students at UCLA, May 22nd, 1972. About 7 months ago, a large number of persons in this country, crossing sex lines, color lines, ideological lines, asked me to consider very seriously making a bid for the presidency of the United States of America. And in the beginning, well, to be frank with you, I laughed. Because I was cognizant of the fact that being simultaneously a black person and a woman placed me in a position of being part of two segments in America who have never really had any real roles to play in terms of the decision-making processes and policies that govern our lives. And I indicated to many of these people that if indeed they were serious, it was very necessary for them to go back and do at least two things to make me feel that it wasn't just a little game or a plan to flatter my vanity. And that was that they had to go back and start to raise monies for me to enter some of the primaries, supplemented by putting together mechanisms for the distribution of literature and for carrying my message to the people of this country. And I found that in 5 weeks' time, in 25 states in this country, the people were serious about Shirley Chisholm making a bid for the presidency. Because they did not want to play politics as usual. They did not want to continue to make a selection between the lesser of the two evils. They didn't want to pull the lever besides the names of those individuals who had been a part of this national leadership team in this country for the past 8 years, which has brought this country to the malaise in which it finds itself. But they wanted to pull the lever besides the name of somebody who would bring new input, would bring new circulation to the bloodstream of this country. Somebody who does not equivocate, and yet somebody who has the morality, excuse me, and the integrity of purpose in the political arena. And I said, yes, I would run. I would run realizing all of the controversies that would swirl about my head. But when you are a catalyst for change in any society, you have to be prepared to take the insults, the abuses, the misapprehensions, the skeptics, those who are not ready for change. You have to be prepared to take on all kinds of situations that would immediately develop when you go against a tradition in this country. A tradition that has said that ever since the inception of the Republic, that only one segment of America can run and hope to be, and has hoped to aspire to be the chief executive of this nation, and that is a white male. And not only in terms of chief executive of this nation, but also in terms of vice presidents and heads of departments and heads of agencies and ambassadors and ambassador generals. You name it, and I will tell it to you. Only one segment seems tacitly to be able to have the creativity, the input, and the ability to solve so many of the problems of this country. And yet, we look at this country today and look at the mess we are in. It is time for new blood. and down this land, it's so interesting to see what has developed and what continues to develop. First of all, I am so sick and tired of hearing the question, Mrs. Chisholm, are you serious?
Yeah.
Now, if I stood on my head, a lot of people would still not believe that I'm serious. I've been traveling up and down this country for 7 months, and I can tell you I'm not traveling for my health. I am traveling because you have told me in America that indeed, if you are serious, you don't sit back like the reluctant dragon and expect somebody to give you the nomination. You get out and at least get to the American people in the highways and the byways and the villages and the towns and the cities, and you say, hey, look at me, here I am in terms of what I can do if I leave this nation. So I've been traveling. And I've been traveling, and people still asking me, are you serious? Is an indication of the prescribed roles that society has given to women and the prescribed roles that society has given to blacks. And here I come, a part of both of these prescribed roles, going out saying, look, I'm running for the presidency of this country. Now look, this country's in a mess. And we better get off this sex hang-up that we have. I've traveled a great deal, and I've never seen where people are so hung up on sex, physically, psychologically, educationally, than the good old USA. Now, this country needs to rely more on humanism. This country needs the talents, the intellect, and the capability of human beings. We are all human beings, first of all.
Yes.
There are brilliant women in this country, and there are brilliant men. There are stupid women in this country, and there's stupid men. There's no psychological test yet that says one sex has superiority over great cranial matter over the other sex. The fact of the matter is that we're allowing ourselves to be diverted from the course in this country. And that course is that we better get together and find out if we can't redirect the priorities in this nation to make this nation become the bulwark that it could truly become, and that is a haven for all kinds of people, regardless of race, color, creed, or sex. That's what we need in America. That's what we need in America today. I'm no ordinary woman out here running for president. Before I even went to the United States Congress, I knew I would have to be 2, 3, 4 times as good as many of those gentlemen in Congress because of who I am. I'm aware of double and triple standards, so I make sure that I fit those standards before I get out there. For over 15 years of my life, I've been writing projects and all kinds of proposals for gentlemen, both black and white. For over 15 years of my life in the politics, in the political streets of New York, I've been the translator and the interpreter as they would go around addressing the people because they could only speak English if they could do that well. For over 15 years of my life, I've been making them look good at city council hearings and budget estimate hearings. Listen, I'm a woman who holds 3 college degrees and 10 points for a PhD. I'm not here to boast to you. But I'm just a little bit sick and tired of people not looking at me in terms of my humanities and my capabilities.
Yeah, right.
It's one thing for people to use your talents. It's another thing to let you be the standard bearer. And that's why I'm out here. I knew I would get a lot of laughs and snide remarks, but I've always gotten that from day one because I'm black, so I'm used to that. The time has come in this country Well, if you keep talking about the American dream and the multifacetedness of the society and you want to get the society together, you better begin to realize that it's time for new input, even on the national level. Here I look at all my opponents who are out here with me to secure the nomination. Let's talk about them a little bit. All of these fine gentlemen, all of these senators, they've been in positions of power for quite some time, and in one way or another, with the exception of one gentleman, have had a part of what constituted a kind of national leadership in this country. They don't have any commitment to people. They have commitment to people every 4 years when it's time to get the vote. If they had commitment to people and compassion and concern for people in this country, why haven't they been able to do something about the Indians on the reservations of this country? Reservations where the land is barren and they cannot grow any kind of food to sustain their bodies and keep their bodies together. And yet this country belongs to the American Indian. And over 70% of the Indians on the reservations do not live to see the age of 40. Where have these senators been in terms of that?
Right.
And you get a token Indian on your staff, and you're going to have a project for Indians when you get elected, because this is the way politics runs in our country. You get token people around you, and you're going to go out and suddenly tell the national elections and tell the people suddenly how great thou art and what you're going to do to save them. Fraud, sham, and hypocrisy. You take the Chicano people in the southwestern part of this country, in New Mexico and California and Texas. I've been visiting them and watching them. These people work sometimes 14, 15 hours a day to put the fruits and vegetables on our tables so that we can eat further. And at the end of the week, they don't even have a decent salary to keep their families together. Where have these senators been? And now you're going to get go get an endorsement of certain big Chicanas? Well, that's the way it's done. I'm not going to get the endorsement of big Chicanas or big blacks or whatever have you because I'm too gutsy. I don't believe in the politics of expediency. That's why this country finds itself in the condition that it now finds itself. Nothing but expedient politics. And every 4 years, we come out of our cobweb political holes, and we get the Madison Avenue boys to put us together a little bit differently. We get the jingles and the slogans ready to flash across your screens in your bedrooms and living rooms at night. And then you have the responsibility of deciding, after all of that is thrust upon you, which one of them you're going to vote for on June 6th. But if you don't want change really, if you like the way they do it every 4 years, and you like the same warmed over, heated over, boiled over politicians coming back telling you they're going to save everybody, go ahead and vote for them. But when they get into office, don't grumble. Don't grumble. I want to get into some public debates with each and every one of them because I know where every one of them is coming from. I'm sorry I don't have a lot of money. One of them said, if Shirley Chisholm had a lot of money, we would have to scurry for cover. You're darn right you would. The only thing I have out here is people who understand what I am doing and have a commitment to me in terms of trying to bring change within the system. Because so many people have told me while I was on this trip, Chizzy, forget about it. You can't bring change within the system. Get out and lead a new movement. You have enough people in this country that see you as a new kind of national voice. Get out of the system. And I'm willing to tell these young people, give me a chance. Give me a chance to try. Come with me on the Chisholm Trail. Now look. We either want change or we like the idea about talking about change. You know? Because if you want change, you'll give Miss Chisholm a chance. I've never been to you before. But of course, if you have a hang-up because I'm black and you're racist, You can't handle that because it tells something about your depths. If you have a hang-up and you're sexist because I'm a woman, well, at this stage of my life, my bones are so fixed and what have you, I can't go to Denmark and have an operation. But if you have a hang-up because you've been disillusioned, fed up with politics as usual, business as usual, the same old baloney for every 4 years, an American man and an American woman can't even run for the presidency of this country if they really have ability unless they have loads of monies behind them. Where is this country, therefore, going to get its creativity and its intellectual capacity and new innovative ideas unless we do something about the whole system of electing a president? To have people running for the presidency that don't even have to be too bright mentally or intellectually, but have the money and the accessibility and the availability of speechwriters and the boys putting them together and having them come before you with the speech in front of them. God help them if they're outdoors and that wind blows the speech away. They can't even talk. But that is the way it is, young people, in our country, that unless you make loads of money, that you can't even think about running for the presidency. To have traveled with them in Florida, and North Carolina, and Michigan, and watching them, sometimes going in before and after some of them, to see how they move from one issue to another and have 10 different positions in the same state. No wonder people distrust our political leaders, because they do nothing but talk with forked tongue. I am the only real people's politician running out here for this important office, because I'm not hooked into any type of group. I don't have to call top-level conferences or have long-distance telephone calls to do what must be done in terms of what my conscience tells me needs to be done. About the malaise that creeps across this land, because I'm not hooked into anybody. That's why the people are so distrusting of politicians, because by the time they get to the White House, they have to take care of other interests first before they can take care of what the interests are of the American people. I am truly the only unbought and unbossed woman in this You see, because I'm not espoused by labor interests, military-industrial complex interest, by corporate interest, by banking interest. He who pays the piper calls the tune. The fact of the matter is, when I went to the Appalachia region of this country, I went to see how some of the poor whites were living. It was such a surprise for them to see me coming out of a two-seater plane to see them. And that was before I decided to run for president. I want you to know how deeply committed to humanity I am. I didn't suddenly go out there because I was running for president. I've been visiting these Indians and these people for years now. And to go out there and see these people, how they are living. And the reason they're surprised is, one, because I'm a black woman, but secondly, it's because they haven't seen a politician in 50 years. But they vote for politicians every 2 and 4 years. But why should they see a politician? Because they're not really important. Nobody cares about them. And for me to go out and say to them, what difference does it make if you're white and the people down the block from you are black, both of you are living in homes with dirt floors. Look, you don't even have wooden floors. So you're white and they're black. What's the difference? Both of you don't get 2 or 3 decent, good meals a day. So you're white and they're black. Both of you lack modern plumbing and sanitary facilities. So you're white and they're black. Both of you are have-nots. you better get together. Man's humanity to man has gone right out the window in this country. And it's been going out for a long time. But we're at a peak of man's inhumanity to man. Never before in this country since the inception of the Republic have you seen so many segments of society simultaneously lashing out at something or somebody. Yes, I tell it like it is. I tell it like it is because it needs to be told, because we've been operating in this country under the basis of so much sham and hypocrisy, it is catching up to us real fast. And the American people wanting out of this war, look at you. Just look at you. March until you're crazy. Having all kinds of moratoriums and vigils, doing everything possible, and yet they don't hear us. It means that they don't really have to listen to you, because you have not made politics important enough in your lives. Like the Swedes and the English and the Indians, the Italians rather, they get all excited about their politics. You haven't made it important enough to begin to start doing something about it on the local and state level, and pulling out all of these congressmen who are constantly helping to give the authorization and appropriations for the continuation of this Holocaust in Vietnam. You have abdicated your citizenship rights and responsibilities because you're fed up. You have said it's no use. I don't want to be bothered with the system. So therefore, by abdicating that you get what you deserve. You have the power, I tell you. You have the power. And particularly these 18 to 21-year-olds. Now, don't go out here, for heaven's sakes, and just give your vote to somebody because you think he's a good Democrat or he's handsome or he talks nicely or he'll do this or do that. Study the record. Study the record of these men for the past 8 years, and if you will, and you will see about if they have this commitment that you're talking about, and I can guarantee you they don't have the commitment. If you take the time to study the record. But what you do is you get caught up in how the jingle and the slogans are put together and how certain people are coming into the communities and opening up storefronts and everything that goes along with the political game. And you get caught. You go along, and you go along, that's your business. Every man and every woman in this country who can vote has the right to cast their ballot for the individual they really believe can guide this ship of state in terms of the direction that it needs to be guided. I can tell you fully well, without being modest about it at all, that if I were not black, and if I were not a woman, and I was a white male, I would get much more attention in terms of what I am doing in this country at this very hour. To look at the position in this country in terms of espousal and equalitarian principles, millions of dollars of taxpayers' money going abroad for economic and financial assistance to prop up a bunch of military dictatorships who are repressing and suppressing the personal liberties of their own citizens within their own borders. Espousal of equalitarian principles. You know, we get away with a lot of verbal Tommy Rot in this country. What happens to equalitarian principles in terms of other peoples abroad when the dollar gets in the way? You know what happens, and I know what happens. If I become president, I'm not going to say if, when I become president, I would cut off every bit of your money, not my money, your money, to countries that are propping up these dictatorships and repressing and suppressing their own people. That's if you believe in democracy. That's if you really believe in democracy. Now you can really understand understand why the corporate interest wouldn't back me. Why the banking interest wouldn't back me. Do you see the interconnection?
Yeah.
Therefore, you can understand why the establishment would never want to see a person like me in the White House, because I tell you, the first thing when I get into that White House, if we have a commitment to the multifacetedness of America, the first thing it would no longer be the White House, it would be the polka dot house. The dream. The dream that everyone speaks about must become a reality, young people. Don't you follow your mothers and fathers in the older generation that have been doing, what they've been doing, constantly mouthing about the words of the dream and not helping it to become a reality, young people. You are going to be taking over the guidance of this country. Please have a gut commitment to the dream becoming a reality before it's too late. The time has come in this country when we must have a government that is reflective of all of the different segments of America. What's wrong with a black person being vice president, an Indian for the head of the Department of Interior, and a woman for the head of the HEW? What's wrong with that? That is a multifaceted society. That is the dream come true. Although I'm literally and figuratively the dark horse, I think I'm beginning to give a few ponies a push. This morning I see a particular candidate all of a sudden was going to have a Mexican American in his cabinet. Stealing my thunder. Oh, fantastic. I want to say these things to you in conclusion. It's the same old story in America. If you're not white and you're not a male, you have no right to be in any kind of race. But I tell you, I intend to be in the race in California because I want change. I don't want anybody talking to me about any more change. I want change. I want to put the liberals on the line, if you will. Mm-hmm. Remember, it took a little black woman to bring 300 of her people out of bondage. It took another little black woman a few years ago to get up and say that she was sick and tired of going to the back of the bus. And she caused a certain thrust in the civil rights movement in this nation. Strange as it may seem, it just may take a black woman to bring us all together again. November. Help me be a catalyst for change in America. God bless you and thank you.
So we'd love to open the floor now to questions for Ms. Chisholm.
Ms. Chiz, I have a little question and a big question.
Sure.
You mentioned something about growing food on reservations. I'd love to hear what that is, because I've never heard those words put together. And the other question is, the big question, I've read forever about women getting a 2 cents on $1.87. It's always struck me that so many job sites in America are controlled by a union or the state or the Fed or local, where I'm sure they're making equal money. I've always wondered what percentage of the female workforce is not covered by an effective equal pay situation.
Great question. I'll take the first one. The Indians that were placed on the reservations, what was happening, what could you still talking like Shirley? Is Shirley? Oh. She's in there.
Yes, she is.
They were saying, what Shirley was speaking to in that instance was she was saying that these Indians who were placed on the reservations, they were given land, a certain amount of land to grow, but the land was barren. They couldn't grow food and water. And they didn't have food and water. They couldn't grow food to sustain themselves. And so nobody was even going out to check that they could have food to keep their bodies and their families going. So she was addressing that issue. The other question is, I really don't have the actual numbers on the disparity in that case, but I would definitely, if you want to give me your information, I can definitely find that out for you.
I've always wanted to
Yes.
know that, so somebody here may know.
Yeah, that I don't know. I can tell you though that was huge for her. I mean, she fought. That was in 1969. She was trying to fight for the minimum wage for certain domestic workers. So I definitely look that up for you. Yes.
I'm ready to write Shirley Chisholm in as a write-in this November. But I think she often referenced the two strikes against her, being
Yes.
black and being female, and often said the female was the greater liability.
Yes.
But it seems that what she did have was guts
Yes.
and rage and humor. So I'm thinking that that's kind of a formula that we really need to be thinking about, because everything she talked about 50 years ago has only gotten worse.
Absolutely.
So as I think about how do we get people out to vote in November, it seems that it's going to take guts, it's going to take a sense of humor, and it's going to take rage.
Yes.
And the more we suppress that rage, the more we just are complicit. So I'm all about women, especially right now, expressing rage as well as black people. It's time.
This time. And absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I think that all of those qualities that Mrs. Chisholm had, that that's how she was able to resonate with people. And they could see her, and she speaks in her speech that she says we need to have just not only those components but also stature. It's time to demand stature and size from our leadership. And so you need to be angry about the issues, because power concedes nothing without a struggle.
Right.
And so all of these things, you have to have that anger, but know how to channel it so that it can still resonate with the people and that it brings people together as opposed to alienating them and separating them. Yes, sweetie, yes.
I have a question
Sure.
about Shirley Chisholm. Did she know Rosa Parks?
Shirley Chisholm did know Rosa Parks. She did know Rosa Parks. And so there's different pictures of them, and you can look that up sometimes. I was able to find a picture of Rosa Parks and Shirley Chisholm. They looked to be like after a meeting or or gathering of some sort. And they looked like, because they were very much, these figures and these historical leaders of ours, they work together quite often on trying to make change. So yes, my dear, she did know Rosa Parks. And references her in her speech as well.
Was Ms. Chisholm married while she was campaigning?
She was married. She was married while she was campaigning, and to Conrad Chisholm. And they were married for actually 24 years. And she speaks about how it was hard because, again, the fact that she was a woman and that she was a black woman and she was getting all of this national attention was very difficult on her marriage. And so, and everybody was calling him the husband of Shirley Chisholm, and so it was very hard on his ego. And so and she does speak to the fact that that's why her first marriage kind of crumbled because of the attention of everybody always catering to his wife Shirley. Yes.
Congresswoman, thank you very much. I wonder if you would talk a little bit about how redlining was really going on very harshly while you were in office, and how that kind of housing discrimination has continued. Because redlining was a serious issue, and it was, interestingly enough, not necessarily only minorities experienced this, because anybody that wanted to move into a neighborhood where there were any minorities couldn't get a mortgage. It didn't matter. So I was wondering if you would talk a little about that.
During that time, well, it was even hard at that time for women to even get a credit card that was in their own name, right? So they couldn't even get a credit card that was in their own name, so let alone getting housing. You still see that today. When it's time to go for a mortgage, black people, and other groups jumping through hoops to prove that they can pay or make good on the loan, or only giving them a certain the ability to apply for certain types of homes in certain neighborhoods to keep blacks out of certain neighborhoods. And that is still something that's still true and reigning true to this very day. I think this is good to be in this type of setting because it tells us that we still have a lot of work to do. But if we don't raise the issues, if we don't bring awareness that these things are still going on and it's still an issue for each and every, for us, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And we're making progress. I don't want to sound doom and gloom, but look where we are though. When our leadership is kind of because apparently the president had buildings that he didn't allow to rent to blacks and minorities, that he wouldn't allow them to rent to them.
That's right.
So and that's the head of the free world. So what are we going to do? I think this is what rise up, rise up.
Ms. Chiz, what do you believe was the biggest challenge for black children and young adults during your congressional career?
Well, I'll answer that as Ms. Chiz. I believe that the biggest obstacle for children is their environment. It always goes back to their environment and how they are raised, what they're being taught in their homes, what they're allowed to be exposed to. If education is not an issue in your home, it's not a priority, you're going to have a hard time succeeding. And if you have a lot of different self-defeating images that are outside your doors, it really comes down, and this is what Shirley did say, it comes down to how you are reared and how well and how focused your surroundings are on your ability to succeed and making sure you get there.
And the resources available.
And the resources available, which is exactly, yes, and the resources available, which is why she fought so hard for Head Start and for mothers, single mothers, to get daycare and issues that pertain to our human resources, our most valuable resource, which is our human resources, things that hit you in the pocketbook, that hit you where you can provide a future for your family.
Did you have something to do with the establishment of the Boys and Girls Clubs
The Boys and Girls Clubs. Now, you know what? I have not read that yet about Shirley. I know that she definitely she was a director of the daycare centers, and she did work with Percy Sutton and things on the SEEK program and Head Start programs and things of that. But I haven't heard about the Boys and Girls Club. She was, you know, a founder of the Black National Caucus, you know, the caucus, and the women's organization. So, but I'll have to check in to see about the Boys and Girls Club. Yes.
Shirley, I would like to thank you first of all for including men.
Yes.
But second of all, I'm interested very much in what your presidential campaign dealt with was primarily human rights and civil rights. What I think has been overlooked by even the most progressive people has been the economy and the inequities that are built into the economy, which really do not permit you to make much progress as long as those are held in place. What's your feeling about how it was then and how it relates to today? Much progress?
In terms of the way monies are spent, or how they're as to how we are getting along in terms of, maybe I'm not really understanding the question.
Okay, I'm interested in whether we've made much progress in so far as economic inequities are concerned. You know, simple things like minimum wage,
Yes.
living wage is what I call it,
Yes.
and such things. I mean, there's a multitude of economic inequities built into this system that we call whatever we want to call it, free markets or capitalism or whatever you want to call it. We seem so reluctant to discuss it because we're afraid of being called communists or socialists that we can't find a way into discussing it intelligently. There are enormous inequities. And you could take education, you could take distribution of school aid at county level, state levels, whatever, but there's never any real political discussion about that. I admire the fact that there has been a lot of willingness to talk about civil rights, to talk about human rights. That's quite right. But you can't have a human right without economic equity.
Yes, and I think you can see that with the riots that have been going on. I think that, and I say
That's what it's exposing.
That's what it's exposing.
It's forcing us to deal with it where we've been reluctant otherwise.
Right, and that has been an argument that, you know, that the people are out here looting and things of that nature because they're taking back what's rightfully, you know, that type of thing. I do think there's been some progress, economic progress for groups of people, minorities, women, but I think that the system is set up in such a way that it makes certain groups of people permanent underclasses anyway. And that if we don't get, underneath and find out what we're doing, there's something that we talk about in the Black community about, the way in which we spend our dollar and how important our dollar actually is. And just we need to re-educate ourselves on how we have something, but we don't realize that we have something. And in doing so, we continue to not make the best use of the resources that we have. I don't know if that's an answer to your question, but I would think.
I wanted to jump in that, of course, Dr. King's assassination happened just before he was leading the Poor People's March out of D.C., out into the poorer counties of Maryland, and he was making the bridge that was tying in both the military complex and poverty. And that was going to be such a huge societal uplift in people demanding and speaking up for their rights. And the whole racial infrastructure construct has been very systematically built in, because you could be poor with a dirt floor in Appalachia, but at least you weren't black.
Right.
And it's a way of people feeling like they've got something up. They've got something up. And we're watching it. It's breaking down now. And we're seeing things so clearly. And we have to change the conversation, and we have to change some of the language, right? Because we get hooked into communism and even socialism. We've got to read, we've got to help educate, define this stuff. And it's impacting all of us. It's impacting all of us. So I think we're seeing it more. I think there's a piece where there's been inroads. We feel better about it all. And it's not enough. The time is now. It's not enough. We want this for each other. And that's what we're asking. Are we willing? Are we, most of us in this room are white. Are we willing to continue in this haze, knowing that our neighbors and our community don't have the same access and resources?
Yeah, well, wasn't that one of MLK's points, too, in that speech that he gave at the Lincoln Memorial, whatever, that white people who don't say anything are a problem. We're
He said
perpetuating the
that
system.
the KKK and the white supremacists were actually not his biggest issue. It was the complacent white person
Right.
who did not want to ruffle the waters.
In the end, we won't remember. Our voices of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Right.
Yes, yes, and that is very, very true.
I think we have time for one more question. By the way, I would like to give you all a round of applause. That was awesome having that support. And one more question from anyone?
Okay, I'll ask this one. Shirley, after your time, we've had a lot more problems with security and certainly with 911, things like that. But I'm wondering, while you were serving in Congress or during your presidential campaign, did anyone ever threaten you, physically to harm you?
I had 3 attempts on my life, and one was quite, just thank God that it didn't go through. There was a gentleman who had a 10-inch blade, who was going to stab me in my back. He would follow me so closely, and they got him, and he didn't, of course, he was not able to succeed with his plans. But yes, three times. But I was never afraid of anyone. Never afraid of anything.
Right?
What would you like our takeaway to be from today?
Oh, power. Power concedes nothing without a struggle. And we can all join in. We can get this done. And we can disprove everything that society's trying to tell us we can't. Go together.
Next time I see you, you'll have long hair.
I do want to thank everybody for coming, and we also want to do the raffle. Before you leave.
Recording the room.
I'm gonna let Shirley pick
And the first ticket winner is 220543.
Some people did leave.
Yeah, I didn't know, unfortunately.
Oh, is that you? No, we have a winner in the back. The winner in the back. Woo!
Hey, Zoe, you have your choice. Taking a bagels, huh? Good for you.
Is there one more?
And there's one more.
And there's one more. Let's see. The ticket number 370037.
You said you had a winning ticket.
Well, it's not I booked it. And congratulations. Fantastic. Thank you
So much for having me. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming.
You should think about running for office. She knows how to give a speech.
And see, that's the problem. So I'm giving all the money and I'm going to show each other. They're much more friendly than you give them credit for. See, if you're in the media, there's animosity, but they actually have a better relationship. Difficult to follow. I've got money that offer everything. You know, there's things that go very cute to the bar. This is what she said that question even though many of her supporters and actors and stuff, oh my God, and that's going to take, it's going to be so much.
Stay safe.
Yes, you too. You guys stay safe.
Nice meeting you.
So I remember. Which is it? You must be.
I'm just waiting for Mark to come back, okay?
She sure did, and Shirley too.
We're already handling this area. I mean,
There you go. There you go. And in Troy, there, right there.
Yeah, right.
There was a spot right there.
Women are either but you know, it's changing, women can be women. Right, we started discussing, what is it to be a disruptor?
Number 38.
so, I got that before we heard, and that's right.
That's right. No.